Hey collectors, welcome to Star Wars Collected. I'm Jonathan. If you're new here, I hope you consider sticking around and subscribing. But if you've been here before, I need you to hit that like button if you believe this is the way, because what I have for you today is the Sideshow Premium Mandalorian statue. We're gonna put it together, give you my thoughts on it. Now the first thing you might notice is that this is kind of a weird box for a Sideshow Premium Format figure to come in, and that's because it didn't come in this box. I bought this statue secondhand from someone off of eBay that did not have the original box, and honestly, I can tell you it's kind of a relief. If I could buy all of my collectibles for about half off, which is what I paid for this, and not have to worry about storing a box forever because some of the value is in that box, I would be so happy. The downside, of course, is that it was, kind of wrapped together with bubble wrap. I haven't even taken it apart, so you and I, we're gonna be in this together. Let's go ahead and dive in here, but hopefully it's all in one piece and we can put it together and figure it out. So let's just go ahead and start grabbing some stuff here. Let's go ahead and take a knife to this and figure out what's in here. The retail on this thing was, I think, north of $600. I got it for about half that shipped to me, but of course it doesn't come with the box. But I've got right now, as I'm kind of still moving into this space, I have an entire guest room that is full of Star Wars boxes. And long term, I have some places that I can stick them, but if I didn't have to worry about that and I could pay, even 20% less for the same collectible, I would do that every single time. The box is good for getting it here, but I've never been that box on a shelf type collector. And I think a lot of people in the sort of premium space aren't really that type of collector. I know the toy collectors, they really seem to like their boxes and keeping things in wrapping basically. So the first thing we have out of the gate here is Grogu in his little pod. This is super cute. Now you may or may not notice that Grogu doesn't have a head right now. I'm hoping that there's a head in here because otherwise this is gonna be a very depressing looking statue. But the detail on it is really cool. I think the color is maybe different than what I perceive the color as. For some reason, I always pictured his little pram being a little bit more white. This is very much a metallic type thing. I am seeing though right off the bat here that there is some damage on Grogu's sleeve. I can see little parts here and there that are kind of kicking around in here. So we might have to do a little bit of repair on this. But it is just sort of that little sleeve section, and it looks like we have some pretty clean breaks. So obviously boxes do have an importance. Boxes, especially from these premium companies like Sideshow and Hot Toys, or Gentle Giant even, are kind of what preserve these things. These are typically made out of polystone, but hopefully that's our only damage that we have in here. I have purchased some things in the past without boxes as well, and 9 times out of 10, they're completely fine when they do come. So right now we seem to have Mandalorian's right arm. It's hard to say, so far this stuff has been well wrapped, but unfortunately, like I said, right off the bat, we've got a little bit of damage on our little green friend. All right. We have Mando's right arm out here now, and this is the arm that of course has the Mudhorn signet on it, and all the fingers look to be intact and all that. I can tell that there's a magnet in here. I love when statues use magnets. It just gives you such a sure fit that it's not just going to over time fall out. When this statue came out, I thought it was interesting, but honestly, we'll see when it all comes together. I thought that its kind of positioning maybe had a little bit too much swagger. It almost looked a little kind of funny to me, but when this came up and I had the opportunity to purchase it at the price that I did, I thought it was well worth it. I do think premium format statues do display better than something like a 1/6 scale. So when you have the option to, get a premium format or upgrade to a premium format, I do like to take that opportunity. Interesting on here, the dome of this is very much like how I would expect the Mandalorian helmet to look. The cheeks, however, underneath here, they've kind of gone with more of a matte, more of a shading. And this is interesting because of course the Mandalorian's helmet is actually all one color, it's all shiny, but Sideshow is very good at going in and adding paint and almost making it like a 3D painting. So even though this is not technically accurate to have this shading here on the cheek, when you look at it and it's on display, it is kind of how you would see it in real life, and then you're not completely dependent on your lighting to reinforce that. So technically wrong, but when you have it all together, it's going to look very right. Now here we seem to have the world's cutest little head outside of my wife's, and so I'm really excited to see my little guy's expression here. My wife and I jokingly call Grogu our son, and we have a little plush. I think it's from Mattel one that I think everybody had or has at some point. And we named ours Yodi, and that was before Grogu had a name. We called him Yodi. And there's our little boy. I would say that the paint on this is much more green than what the Sideshow live action piece is or what he appears to be in person. But again, this might sort of be an element of the lighting and shading. His hands are much more the color that you kind of expect it to be, that kind of lighter green. You do kind of get that lighter green here around his ears and things like that. Overall though, without kind of putting it all together, I would say it's probably a few shades too dark for how we normally perceive Grogu's skin being. And what is a right arm without a left arm? I see people listing boxes on eBay for Sideshow and Hot Toys things all the time. Sometimes they're 20 bucks, sometimes they're like 50 bucks, and I'm always kind of surprised that that's worthwhile. I should probably just follow a few of them at some point and see if any of them come to auction and people purchase them. You know, because an alternative to keeping all your boxes would be selling your boxes, realizing that you're losing some value, but that you've kind of gotten that value back in cash. So it might not be the worst thing in the world if they're actually profitable and worth selling. So here we have our left arm. This is the one that has the gauntlet that has your whistling birds on them. Paint on this overall looks really nice, and they've done a good job at kind of putting a little bit of muck into the corners and bringing out all the details. Overall, I'm very happy with the paint job so far. This is very long and skinny, so you can probably figure out what this is. This is probably one of the more brittle pieces in here, so I'm going to be kind of careful cutting it out of here. All right, so we seem to have a slight bend in the rifle here from shipping, but that might be something that we can just bend right on back. Of course, it's gonna go on his back, so we'll see once it's all plugged in there, it might kind of straighten itself out. The tabs that go in here and here, who knows what'll happen once we put it in, but good coloring. They've got all the differences here. All right, friends, we are getting down there. We've got some packaging stuff in here. So let's see, we've got 2 arms, a head, technically another head. We've got Grogu's body, the rifle. So what do we need? We need a body, and we need some legs, and we need a stand. Let's start with this. This looks like an enormous torso is what this looks like. Go ahead and cut here between the legs. I think I would have made an excellent surgeon. I mean, look at me. I'm just like going in here, cut between the legs. That's exactly what every guy wants to hear. Just doing it willy-nilly here. It's very tempting to want to just pull these things off, and if it was a lesser figure, lesser design, then you'd probably be able to do that. But Sideshow does, I think, a really great job at going through and making sure that they add all the little pouches and all the little details in the costume, and the Mandalorian's belt alone has just a ton of detail to it. Okay. So here we have the legs and the torso all as one piece, and I'm just wiggling it around a little bit just to make sure that it comes as one piece. In my experience, Sideshow stuff, the premium format stuff, usually has a separation in the middle here. So a lot of times the top part here will be a separate piece, either above the belt or below the belt, usually above the belt, and that comes off as a separate piece. Lots of great detail. You've got the detonators over here. It looks like we're missing one, but on purpose, just it's been in use. You've got the cartridges here, which is interesting. He still wears this bandolier with these cartridges on it for his pulse rifle in the new season, despite not having his pulse rifle for quite some time. This is a detail I've never noticed before. He has a little tool stuck into his boot. Of course, if you know anything about Boba Fett, you know that he has all these tools stuck in the front of his costume. So that's kind of a cool thing to see. There's like sort of almost like an extra, I'm gonna call it like kind of solder. I don't really think that's what it is, but kind of this like gloopy metal on top. I always kind of perceive that more as being a dent down, but on here it is up. And he's got his little side blaster here, a couple more cartridges, good leather work and things like that. So pretty damn cool. So what's left? What's left? We've got, his full body here. What could be the missing ingredient? I know, you know. This is kind of what makes this statue kind of cool and special. You guys know, of course, that Grogu has his little pram that hovers, and that's kind of how he's been able to keep up with the Mandalorian, who of course can walk much faster. but that pram floats. So how do you show something floating? Now, commonly in statues, they'll use a little rod. Sometimes that rod is black. Sometimes that rod is clear to give you a little bit more of that perception that it's floating. But occasionally you'll find a couple statues out there where they build the floating part kind of into the figure. So the figure is actually supporting both. So some prime examples of this would be Gentle Giant made a statue with Darth Maul and the blood fin, this little scooter thing. And the blood fin actually hangs off of Darth Maul from behind. But when you look at it straight on, it gives you the perception that it is floating in midair. There's also a really great statue by Sideshow called Duel of the Fates, which has Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Darth Maul kind of dueling off, and they are kind of mounted into one another. So I believe it's Darth Maul is sort of like in the air and is kicking Qui-Gon Jinn in his chest, and he kind of floats in there, and it just looks really, really cool. So this cape is going to plug into the body, the head will plug into that, and then you'll notice over here, you have another little peg, and that peg is for the pram. So that will be cool to see all together. Get this base out of here, and then we will get rid of that box. One thing that I think is cool that Sideshow does is that they take the opportunity often to, on the base of their statues, to put some artwork that is kind of unique. Their older pieces, they didn't really do this. It was much more standard to just have sort of an edition number on the bottom. It says Star Wars on it. There's some licensing information and stuff like that. But it seems like more recently, they've kind of switched to this effect, which I think is a really nice little Easter egg for people that are collecting it. So, you know, just a little Mandalorian sketch here, kind of really kind of the statue in a lot of ways. And you have the Razor Crest off to the side over there, some moisture evaporators. So kind of probably like a Tatooine type scene. This says the Mandalorian and Grogu Premium Format Figure, 2021 copyright. And this is number 582 out of 7,500. So pretty mass-produced statue, quite honestly. I think, you know, people understood that they had a hit on their hands with the Mandalorian and, you know, didn't hold back. We're gonna get out our handy dandy Lazy Susan here to put this all together. There's only one hole in the entire base. So we've got a foot over here with a hole on it. So we're gonna plug that in first. Okay, so now we have an arm. Let's go put the arm in here, and again, there's a little magnet in there, so it doesn't like snap really hard. You can see right now I've made an abomination with Grogu's head. It's stuck to his daddy's arm. So this could be a new character with a floating arm that kind of like comes out and steals children at night or something like that. But you know, we'll see. We'll work on that. So let's go ahead and put this arm on here as well. And again, it's not like it like really snaps it in. It's just that it gives you that little extra security, knowing that you're not relying purely on gravity or on tension. And let me turn this around so you guys can see it. So in the back here, we have two little pegs. We're gonna put this piece in one and one piece in the other. It looks like it actually goes the upside down way how I would have done it, but this is just, you know, his style. Makes more sense, I guess, if you're grabbing it, to grab it this way, even though it might look cooler the other way. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and put this cape in now. Okay, finally getting that lined up and down in there. So that's in, and the donning of the head here. Okay, so you know, there's Mando looking all good, and we can attach this right here. Now, I could be wrong. I don't remember the pram having this massive thing on the back, but I could be wrong. Maybe it does. If not, then this was done for the statue and looks a little weird. But go ahead and put that on here, and it slots right in. Now, luckily, this piece in my hand is very lightweight. It might look like it's a little bit precarious to have something like that on there, but really it's not too bad. And of course, the piece that you need for every Grogu statue is a Grogu head, because otherwise you're gonna freak the kids out. There we go, we have it all together. Now, like I said, unfortunately, Grogu here does have some wrist damage, and I do have a number of little pieces here, most of which appear to be fairly large. I can see where that piece will glue in right there, and that actually appears to be a very, very clean break. Obviously a bummer. You don't want to open up a statue, even if it's pre-owned, and have it be broken in shipping. But this is the type of thing that is an easy fix. It's always important to when you're selling something, to be very honest with the condition of it, you are selling to a fellow collector, and then when you ship it to Juice, do the best job you possibly can putting it all together, which I think this seller did, but you know, sometimes things happen. And also, don't be afraid of something that maybe has a scratch here and there, or has something like this. You know, a lot of times I'll see these listings of a statue that has some very minor damage, a scratch or a finger has broken off, and they still have the finger, and it'll just sell for so little. And I think people are just really afraid of using just the tiniest bit of glue on it to make yourself a fantastic statue. Overall, I think this looks really, really cool. This Grogu little boo-boo, Grogu boo-boo, will be super easy to fix with just a tiny touch of glue, and you know, in 24 hours, you'll never even know it was there. There is some really solid painting techniques going on here. You do have a nice glossy kind of reflective dome. I can actually see myself in there, but then you have some other areas where it's like a little bit more matted, and they've gotten all the different textures right, and they've painted the highlights and then kind of let the shadows fall. And like we were talking about, the helmet looks as you would think the helmet would look, even though it technically is not accurate to how it actually is painted. But statues are art pieces, right? They're not necessarily props. So it is designed to kind of look how you perceive it. I think the base is good. I'm not one who likes a super complex base. It's kind of like a frame on a picture. I've never been a big fan of big ornate frames. Let the piece of art speak for itself. And I think that this is saying that the Mandalorian has swagger. And what do you guys think of this pose? Let me know down in the comments. When I first saw it, I kind of thought it was just a little too much, a little too Vogue runway. My wife does some runway modeling in New York, and this guy looks like he's Zoolander hitting the runway or something like that, just a little bit over the top. But looking at it in person, I think he's long and lean enough that it really doesn't look too bad, and actually looks pretty darn cool now that I really look at it. The quarter scale is, I think, such a fantastic scale. It really kind of gives you a commanding presence, and you know, when it's got a character like this who already kind of commands some presence, that is really cool to see. So guys, hop down in the comments, let me know what you think. Would you have gotten this for half off, even if there's a little breakage there that you didn't know about or that happened in transit? For me, it's super easy. I all day long I would take, you know, statues like this that are basically half the price, doesn't have a box, and maybe I got to do a little gluing on it. All day long I would take that, because I can get 2 of them for the price of 1, something like that later on. So guys, let me know, do you collect Sideshow Premium Format statues? If you could pick any single one out there, which one would you choose? If you're not following me on Instagram, make sure you do that. It's a great place for us to connect a little bit more individually. I'm always throwing up polls and kind of funny stuff on there, so it's a great place to connect with me a little bit more on its own. And if you like videos like this, make sure you subscribe, because we have new videos here all the time. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's a huge stack of cardboard boxes back here, along with a bunch of other stuff. Those are all things that I need to unbox and show to you guys. So there's tons of content coming, and I can't wait to share it with you. All right, guys, see ya.